This podcast is not sponsored or supported by any business or organization. The views reflected on these podcast episodes are my own. Be aware I am not a medical doctor, travel agent, or any other kind of expert, but I hope you still enjoy. Hey friends, welcome to the Gluten-Free Advocate, a Substack and podcast that helps me process my health journey and my determination to pretend that those health conditions don't exist at all. If you're looking for tips, tricks, and learnings for traveling the world with celiac disease and type 1.5 diabetes, you have come to the right place. Now, let's get started. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Gluten-Free Advocate. So this week I'm going to be talking about how to manage a long flight when you have celiac disease and type 1 diabetes. So my first trip of the year was going to Australia, and next episode is going to be all about that trip and basically how to handle when things don't go according to plan. That's okay, happens all the time. And there are things that you can do when you have all these different autoimmune conditions, but this week we're going to focus on just dealing with a long haul flight. So I've done, I think an 8-hour flight was the longest flight I've ever done up until this point to Europe. And that was long enough. And I felt like even if I didn't have anything to eat on that flight, as long as I ate a little bit before it, I could make it totally fine. But on this journey, I had to fly to Atlanta from North Carolina, which is only about like an hour or 45 minutes, maybe 2 hours. Then fly on the way there, 5 hours from Atlanta to Los Angeles. And then it was 15 hours from Los Angeles to Sydney, Australia. On the way back, it was 13 hours from Sydney to LA. And then from LA to Atlanta, it was about 4 hours, a little under. And then about an hour and 45 minutes back from Atlanta to Wilmington. So a lot more stops along the way, but a lot longer in needing to be able to, figure out how to eat. I couldn't just go 30 hours or whatever the number turned out to be in flight. I think it was 25 hours on the way there, probably about, what would we say, about 20 on the way back of flying. And, that's a long time to go without eating. So I needed to come up with a plan as far as my celiac disease goes. And then I also needed to come up with a plan for my diabetes. And I'm going to do the diabetes last because that was the most complicated part about all of this. But what I can say, I was very fortunate, or another added difficulty for, the celiac disease was in Australia, they're very strict about what food they allow into the country when you are flying in. Or even when you're just going in via ship. And for me, I, was told, and when I researched, it just seemed to be as long as it was a prepackaged good and it wasn't nuts or meats or anything, fruits, vegetables, anything like that, I would be good to go. So my original plan was I packed a bunch of granola bars, none of them containing any nuts or anything like that or fruits. And I also packed some Rudy's Uncrustables. Now, those were a little bit more difficult to get because I could not get them in North Carolina. They don't sell Rudy's Uncrustables. And basically, to take a couple steps back, what are those? So growing up, there were these sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that were called Uncrustables. And they just basically took off the crust. And I hated eating crust as a kid. So those were really great to go for. They didn't make those gluten-free until now. Rudy's now sells these peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, Uncrustables with gluten-free bread. They don't sell them in North Carolina, as I said, but they do sell them in New York. So my mom, and they probably sell them in Atlanta too. I probably could have gotten them in Atlanta, but I was already talking to my mom about it, and I couldn't even order them to be shipped to North Carolina. So my mom purchased them in New York, and then she sent them down to North Carolina. I packed them in my bag. They were prepackaged. They're technically not nuts. They were not any, thing on the forbidden list. So I figured I was okay. And so then I packed those up, packed up granola bars, kept everything that was not on the list safe. And everything was prepackaged, as I keep saying. So I figured, good to go. I'll eat those on the plane if they don't have a gluten-free meal for me, which, by the way, as soon as I always book my ticket, I make sure that under the there's a disabilities section, I make sure to say I need a gluten-free meal. And if I always use Delta, so you have to do it on their website. You can't do it on their app. And you go to their further assistance necessary section that they have when you're looking at your ticket. And I went there and you could get a diabetic friendly meal. You could get a vegetarian meal. I ordered a gluten-free meal. And then once I had that all sorted, sometimes, domestic or any American-based airlines like Delta, American, JetBlue, places like that, they're notoriously bad at making sure there's gluten-free meals on board and that they're safe. So there's always a chance, there's always a risk. So I packed up a bunch of granola bars, these Rudy sandwiches, and all the other stuff on the way there. And I packed like a full lunchbox. So that was for my food. When I got to Atlanta, I was looking through, I had posted a video on my Instagram or TikTok or whatever, all of the above, and it posted to Facebook, and someone saw my lunchbox and the things that I packaged up, and they said, by the way, I had to throw away all of my food when I got to Australia. They did not allow me to, bring it in, and it was just a bunch of stuff thrown away. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Because, I packed for on the way there, and I packed for on the way back, because as we'll get to in next week's episode, things don't always go according to plan. So I didn't count on the fact that I'd be able to find a grocery store and pack up all the things and then bring it back. So I was panicked in the Atlanta airport of like, oh no, what do I do? And so then I started eating the snacks that I brought. So I didn't want all that food to go to waste. And my mom took all this time and spent this money to send me these Rudy's Uncrustables. So those are the first that I went to. And I ate, all that I could on the flight to Atlanta. I had a couple of them, and then I had like 2 more in the Los Angeles airport. And then I, was trying to eat them. I tried to eat something every 2 hours on the plane. They did provide my gluten-free meal. It was actually quite good. I enjoyed it quite a bit from LA to Sydney. And then when I got into the Sydney airport, I, said, hey, they give you this form to fill out once you're on the plane. And so I filled it out, and they said, are you bringing any of these food items? And it gave a list. And I looked at the list, and none of what I had was on that list. So I answered honestly and said no. But apparently there's dogs that are sniffing and like waiting for you to see if you lied at the Sydney airport. But I did not lie. So I did not know what to do. So I was still freaking out, and I had this anxiety in the back of my head of, oh my God, I have all this stuff. What am I going to do? Oh my goodness. I don't want this to all get thrown away because I might not be able to have food for when I come back. And I went through security, went through all the things, got my checked bags, and then I saw this guy that had a biosecurity shirt on, like vest on. And I went up to him and I said, excuse me, sir. Hello. I have a question. I answered honestly, I don't have any of these things on the form, but do you still need me to go through something to declare, like the line for to declare stuff, so I could show you the food I did bring? And he goes, well, what did you bring? And I said granola bars and these, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, Uncrustables, but everything is prepackaged. Nothing was made at home and it's all store-bought, packaged up in its original packaging. And he told me, no need to declare. Go through the nothing to declare line. Enjoy your trip. Have a good one. So I forgot about it. I was like, great, awesome. Didn't have to throw away all my food. So I went through security, had my trip. On the way back, you have to fill out that same form. And I didn't have any additional things on there. Like I didn't get any more food that I was bringing over the border. It was still the same stuff that I had from the trip going in. And so I filled it out the same way. And everybody was freaking out that I wasn't saying I have all this other food. I said, well, this is what the guy told me on the way in. So I'm not lying. I'll ask the same question again and see what happens. And then I went through when the ship came back into port and we were getting off. I handed the guy my form and he asked me if I was traveling solo. I said yes. He gave me a weird look. And I was like, all right, Judgy McJudgerson, traveling solo is fine. And then he said, okay, have a good day. And it really wasn't a thing where I had time to be like, excuse me, sir. There were no dogs there sniffing around. So I went through without an issue. Now, all that is to say, apparently other people were not as lucky as I was, but didn't say anything or did declare it and their food got thrown away. So I'm not really sure what to tell you as far as what I think you should do. I can only tell you what my experience was. And that was my experience. It was, I went through, I asked when I felt that I could, and I was told to keep going. So I think if you stick with prepackaged stuff, avoid any nut items, any, fruit, vegetables, meats, it seems like you should be okay. But there are things like you have to clean your shoes and make sure that you're not bringing any dirt from that are on your shoes into the country. And there's a lot of really strict things going to Australia and New Zealand that you have to be super, super careful about. So make sure that you really do your research. I evidently did not do enough. I took a lot of things at face value for what I saw. I did not do enough deeper research into that. So make sure that you do a little bit of deeper research. So that was the food portion of my long flight and what I had handled. On the way back on my flight, I was also a little nervous because I had to move my flight up a week. Again, the details of which will be talked about in a future episode. But I had to move my flight up, so I only had 3 days notice rather than many, almost a year's worth of notice going into, going into my flight. I did check a gluten-free meal as soon as possible. I think I did it like 2 days before. I still had a gluten-free meal waiting for me when I went to my flight. So Delta has been really great so far as preparing meals for me every time I've had to take a long flight and I requested those meals. So I'm trying to see if I can do a different type of airline, a more international airline, the next time I have to do a long flight like that. But we'll see how that goes. Now, onto the diabetes portion. Now, this is a little bit more where I'm going to try and not get angry because it was somebody has to get their act together. I don't care who it is. It's got to be Omnipod or Dexcom or the insurance companies or medical doctors or the pharmacies. I don't know who, but somebody's got to get their act together and try to help people with type 1 diabetes. I have only been diagnosed for the past year, not even a full year. And it's caused me so much stress to get the things that I need in just even on the day-to-day that it blows my mind. It's really horrifying and really difficult. And I can't even imagine if you are a parent with a child with type 1 diabetes. It's a full-time job having to take care of yourself, let alone taking care of somebody else with type 1. And it's so incredibly expensive. So here's what I did in trying to prepare for my journey of knowing I was going to be out of the country for 3 weeks, knowing I was going to be in a country where I didn't necessarily know if I'd be able to get the things that I needed readily available to me. So in November, I saw my healthcare practitioner, I think it was a nurse practitioner for my endocrinologist. And I spoke with her and I gave her a warning and I said at the end of January, I was going to be going on this 3-week trip. What did I need to do in order to make sure I had enough insulin and enough equipment to last me through all those times and make sure that, I could get enough of it up front without a huge cost or penalty for me from the insurance company. So she told me what she said. Okay, I put in a note, and that way when you go and see your endocrinologist, the doctor, in the beginning of January, we'll have everything sorted and ready for you to go. I went to my pharmacy not long after that. I said, hey, I have a 3-week trip coming up. What are the things from your end that I need to do? And they said, it will just need to get a vacation waiver from your insurance. And we put that request through. And as long as that goes through, then we'll go and take care of that. I had to change insurance companies in the midst of the end of the year to the beginning of this year, for my monthly premiums tripled in cost because it was supposed to cover more, especially and cover all the type 1 diabetes things and help me out. And it didn't matter what state I was in, that I'd be able to get coverage. And that's why I was paying triple the amount that I was the year prior. So in the beginning of the year, when I saw the doctor, he said, okay, I put in the prescription. You should have everything that you need. Good to go. I went to the pharmacy. They said, we don't have anything from your doctor that says that we can get all these other things. Tell your doctor that we need to write these things, that he needs to write it out a certain way, the prescription, so we can get all the stuff for you. And then we can, go back and figure all that out. And then I went back to my doctor's office. I called. No response. I called about every day for a couple of days, left a message, even though they said don't leave multiple voicemails. I don't even think I did every day. I think I did every 3 days. I called 3 times and I waited 3 business days between each call. And all the while I was talking to my insurance company, and they said, we need X, Y, and Z to happen from your doctor and from your pharmacy. So every time someone in the loop gave me an update, I would go and talk to somebody else. Then I went, finally, about a week later, I had 2 weeks until my trip at this point, got a response from my doctor. It was a nurse that called me back a week after, said, hey, I don't think that we need to write you an updated prescription. I told them all the updates that I'd had. They were like, no, this is on the pharmacy to do. So then I went to the pharmacy and I went around in a circle again. Because then the pharmacy said, we'll see what we could do to help you, but I really think that if your doctor did this, that would help, and then it would help insurance cover all this stuff. So then this happened for another week where I went in a loop, and everybody was like in that never-ending Spider-Man meme where everybody's pointing at one another. And I wasn't going to have enough Omnipods. I wasn't going to have enough Dexcom sensors. I said, please, if anybody. So about 5 days before my trip, I went back to CVS, and they were like, well, your insurance company no longer covers anything coming from us. So I was there for about an hour, and this wonderful pharmacist went and did everything that he could to get me as much as he could, as cheap as possible. And then it was going to be, for the amount of Omnipods that I needed, it was going to be like, I don't know, between $500, $600. I was like, oh my God, like what the heck? So I spent money that the cheapest amount that he got me was a couple $100 to get the sensors that I needed, the amount of sensors that I needed to last me through the 6 weeks, and to maybe give 1 or 2 extra, which was not good. I had enough insulin, which was great. And I couldn't get answers, apparently. And then I called the insurance company, and they were like, your doctor needs to write the prescription for the Omnipods and within the next couple of hours for us to be able to cover a vacation waiver for the cost, for us to be able to get you those Omnipods in time. And I was like, oh my goodness, what the heck? So I tried calling the doctor, and whoever was answering his messages said that they were not going to be able to do it in enough time. And I was like, well, I gave you guys 3 months notice that this was happening. What could I have done differently? And mind you, in the meantime, I had seen this video on TikTok where a woman said that in order to make sure that when her and her husband traveled for a year, that they just received the Omnipods, but they didn't use them so that they could make sure that they had enough to last them through the year. And they handled their insulin a certain way and did all these things, but basically that they hoarded their supplies leading up to the trip. So I was already starting to do that when a week went by and I wasn't getting answers from my doctor. I started hoarding stuff, but that was already too late to make sure that I had everything that I needed. And again, I've only had, type 1 for a year. Not even. And so the Omnipod is incredibly helpful for me there's a whole math equation that you've got to do if you're going to give yourself the appropriate amount of insulin. And it always stresses me out. I never feel comfortable doing it because I never know if I understand everything correctly. And I always have a lot of extremes happening when I give myself insulin because I'm not confident in my skills to be able to do the math equation that I need to do to give myself the appropriate amount of insulin. And no one else in my family has type 1. And the people that I could ask, they've been doing it for so long, they don't even know how to help me through this because to them it's so second nature. They're having a hard time breaking it down to where I am at the beginning to be able to tell me what I need in order to kind of catch up to where they're at. And I feel like it shouldn't be this complicated, but it has been. And that's just been my experience. And so I was hoarding supplies, and then I finally, because the insurance company was giving me, one guy I spoke to was just very nasty and not willing to help me understand what was going on and not willing to walk me through it. And I had to switch pharmacies from CVS to Harris Teeter. Harris Teeter was not helpful for me at all at that pharmacy. Harris Teeter, by the way, is a grocery store of the South. Like you see them a lot in the South. And then there's, I went back to CVS to see if they could help me, and they were really kind and wonderful and willing to help me, even though I couldn't go through them anymore through my insurance. And they did what they could to keep costs down. But GoodRx, I was going to GoodRx and trying to get coupons, but they don't do coupons for Omnipods. I called Omnipod myself to see if I could get anything cheaper, to see if I could get anything covered or if they could help me out at all. They wouldn't help me. I said I had an Omnipod that had broken, and apparently in the past they would just give a whole new box of 5 through that, but they only gave me one singular pod to replace the one that had been broken. I was like, darn it, that's not helpful. And there's no infrastructure evidently in place to go directly to Omnipod, and there's no coupon code. You have to go to their financial assistance line, and they did not give me what I needed in enough time to be able to give coupons to my pharmacy to be able to go through. They take like 10 business days to respond if you're lucky. They usually don't respond within 10 business days, and then I'll follow up after 10 business days, and then it's still like 3 more business days. And when I did that, they were like, you need to refill out all this paperwork, but I didn't even get a response until I was already in Australia. So I went through every avenue that I could. And I had about 1 or 2 pods of wiggle room. I had plenty of insulin, so if I had to do the math equation, I could. And I walked away with an extra sensor. So I did have enough and just had to hold my breath during the 3 weeks just in case anything went wrong and make sure nothing went wrong with my equipment. So what I'm going to do in the next trip is I went to all of these places and asked what I could have done better. No one really had a response except my doctor said, let us know a month before your trip, which, you'd think 3 months would be plenty of time. And apparently the nice zone is a month, which is incredibly frustrating. The insurance was of no help. Omnipod was of no help. CVS Pharmacy was of help, but no one else was willing to cooperate, and there was only so much that they could do. And Harris Teeter Pharmacy was of no help. So really, really frustrating. So what I have learned and what I'm going to do next is hoard my supplies. That I am already starting to make sure that, in times when I figured, oh, I have enough of X, I don't feel that I need to go pick them up and go and grab more supplies, I'm going to go and do that anyway. I'm going to go and get those supplies even if I don't need it, just to make sure I have enough, or I have enough backlog for in case anything goes wrong, there's an emergency, or if I have a trip, because I have a lot of jobs that cause me to travel, a lot of work opportunities where I have to travel, and I need to be able to do that and not have to worry about it. It's not just for pleasure, it's also for my job. Because I have a feeling that snarky people will say, well, why you stop traveling? Like, you don't have to travel. Why do you have to be a nuisance to everybody else? And it's just because you have a medical condition doesn't mean that you have to stop living your life. And that's a whole other episode. But so it was really frustrating, but I got just barely enough of what I needed. It did come at a big, huge expense financially for me to do that. And so the only advice that I could think of right now is I'm going to start hoarding my supplies. And I do have another long haul trip coming up in the summer, another 3 weeks. And I'm going to try and see what that gets me. And hopefully I'll have updated advice. But I would love to know, if you're going on a lengthy trip, what do you do to make sure that you have enough stuff that you need for your type 1 diabetes? And if you have celiac disease too, I want to know what types of foods that you pack and how do you make that as easy as possible for yourself where you're not totally stressing out. I also do want to say Delta Airlines, the real MVP. I called them ahead of time and I said, hey, I'm going to have my checked bag, my carry-on bag, and a backpack along with a medical bag. How can I make sure that I'm able to bring my carry-on bag and my backpack and my medical bag onto the plane and only have one checked bag? So for Delta Airlines, they do allow you to bring, if you have a medical bag that is only with your medical equipment, your prescriptions, and nothing else in there, they let you bring on that additional bag at no extra charge and no extra hassle. So I was able to, and all you have to do is go up to the gate up to the desk at the gate for your plane, for your flight, and let them know, hey, I have a medical bag. Is there anything that you need me to do? And everybody was wonderful about it. Only one person gave me an attitude about it and was like, no, why are you even telling me? Everybody else was super wonderful about it. My last flight from Atlanta to Wilmington, they had me go up to first class and they stored my medical bag for me. That was the only flight where they did that. And that was incredible. Everybody at Delta was super helpful as far as making sure I was taken care of and felt safe with my type 1 and making sure I felt safe and taken care of with my celiac disease. So I just want to say thank you, Delta, for all that you do. Appreciate it so, so much. So yeah, that was what I did for my long flights and my lengthy trip this go around, which turned out to be not such a lengthy trip. All my stress turned out to be for nothing, but that's again for next week's episode. So make sure to tune in. I have a lot of awesome episodes coming out, some guests that we're going to be speaking to. So make sure that you tune in. Follow me on all social media platforms at The Gluten-Free Advocate. Follow me on Substack and make sure that you tune in next week. Thank you so much. Till next time. Thank you for joining me this week for an episode of The Gluten-Free Advocate. For more information on what's discussed on the podcast, check out the episode description and or my Substack, The Gluten-Free Advocate. If you have any questions or fun stories to share, feel free to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Till next time. This episode is produced by Leigh Francis Productions.